The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. Two men went up to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying thus: God, I thank you that I'm not like the other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give a tenth of what I earn. But the tax collector, standing off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man, this tax collector, went to his home justified rather than the Pharisee, for all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Some years ago, I read an interesting book by a psychiatrist called Games People Play. He was not talking about board games or computer games, but about interpersonal games. Little strategies we use to make ourselves feel better in regard to other people. Like, we're kind of better, all right? He said the original game we all learn when we're children is the game he called Mine's Better Than Yours. My bicycle is better than your bicycle. My dolly's prettier than your dolly. My dad can beat up your dad, right? Those kind of things. Maybe I told you the story about when I was a boy in Fond du Lac. We had a house that had a second story porch off one of the bedrooms. It was called an airing porch. You could air out your bedding, okay? So one day my sisters were across the street visiting with their little friends, and they got into this comparison thing. And finally, my sisters said, we got an airing porch on our house. The little friends said, hey, that's nothing. We got a mortgage on our house. Mine's better than yours. Jesus is very much aware that there's a tendency we have to put ourselves above others by comparisons, okay? And so this parable, this story, it's so powerful. The Pharisee says, I am not like the rest of humanity. I do this and that and the other thing. If he, just said, well, I'm better than some people, but the rest of humanity, I'm above all of them. That's a sin of arrogance, isn't it? Huh? Jesus saw so many people who are convinced of their own goodness and self-righteousness and despise everyone else. Well, we know people like that. Imagine living with that Pharisee. I can get up in the morning at 5 o'clock and be raring to go. Why can't you? So we need to really look at that. Don't you wish we see some humility in our presidential candidates? Would that be nice? Huh? The basic flaw was that he thinks he's better than the rest of the human race. Which means we lack compassion when we're that way, self-righteous. We don't no attempt to understand other people's feelings. I recall my last year in the seminary. I've gone through a lot of mental and emotional stress and pain, but never had any real physical pain. I kind of looked down on people who complained about their physical problems or pains. But then, my last month in the seminary, I had a couple of wisdom teeth pulled. And I developed a terrible muscle spasm in my jaw. Did that ever hurt? I couldn't chew, I could barely talk, and it kept me up in the night. I couldn't sleep. Never again did I downplay anybody's physical problems or illnesses. I learned an important lesson. So the first step in humility is to accept our humanness. Realize that you and I share all the wonders as well as all the limitations of being human. I have in myself all the same anxieties and insecurities and tendencies toward self-indulgence and all the 7 capital sins that anyone else has. Because then, you see, we'll not trust in our own goodness, but in the power and goodness of God. See, Philip Neri once said, "Lord, watch out for Philip. Keep a good eye on him. If you do not, he will surely betray thee." That's not morbid self-depreciation. That's simple honesty, okay? We often think humility is truth. The truth about ourselves, the truth about other people. We are all sharing the same wonderful things of being human and the same limitations. And second, humility does not mean we deny our good qualities. That would be untrue. That would be really insulting to God. They're not our own creation. They're gifts of our good God in heaven. I enjoy wonderfully good health, okay? I don't really have to work at it that much. It's purely God's gift. Years ago, I was a worrywart. I worried about everything. But God gradually healed me of that. Again, not my doing. It's God. Well, I can't take pride in that because I just need to be grateful for God's goodness to me. In today's second reading, St. Paul is in prison because of his preaching, okay? And he has this wonderful letter he writes to Timothy. He says, "I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith." He wasn't bragging, he was just stating the truth, okay? But he knew the power to do all that did not come from himself. He said, "The Lord stood by me and gave me strength. He will bring me safe into his heavenly kingdom." He attributes all that to the goodness of God. I realized that, years ago, I could memorize my homily, which had not one but 2 sides. I memorized the whole darn thing. I can't do that anymore. I got a simple outline now, 1 page, and I need a cheat sheet to help me, okay? The memory isn't as good as it used to be. Simple truth. St. Paul realized that he was supported and strengthened by God in every step of his life, and he gave thanks for that and gave the credit and the honor to God. And finally, if we live in humility, our prayers can become very powerful. Jesus said today, the tax collector went back to his home justified, at peace with God, forgiven, because of his humility and honesty in admitting his sins and his problems. Today in the first reading, we heard the prayer of the lowly person pierces the clouds, and the Most High God responds. The prayer of the humble person pierces the clouds and gets to the heart of God. All of you can share with us, I'm sure, times in your life when you were going through a difficult time. You turned to God in prayer and you received the help you needed. Not every time, but many times. And for that you are profoundly grateful. And finally, we heard in Psalm 34 today, the beautiful Psalm 34, when the humble cry out, the Lord hears them, and from their distress he rescues them. And that is the word of the Lord.